to the power of words. Joining us now are two men that know a thing or two about crafting a State of the Union address. We're lucky to have David Frum. He's a senior editor at The Atlantic, but before that was a Bush 43 speechwriter, and also David Kusnet with the Podesta Group, but led Bill Clinton's speechwriting team during the first 2 years of his presidency. David and David, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
So let me start, if I can, with David Frum here. I wanted to ask you, given where the president is at this point, he's got House and a Senate controlled by Republicans. He doesn't have to run for re-election. He doesn't have to protect red state Dems. If you were drafting this speech, what would you hope to accomplish?
Well, I would hope to accomplish, if I were drafting it, a cementing of the president's legacy for economic growth. But what he is planning on doing, which is very different from what I'd advise, is to redefine not the country and his legacy, but his party. This speech is a speech to Democrats, and he's urging his party to steer a more leftward course than it has been able to steer over the past 6 years, and then that he fears Hillary Clinton, or whoever is his likely successor, will want to steer over the 4 years beginning in 2016.
Yeah, many people are saying it's a speech rather for 2016, to your point there. David Kusnet, I want to go to you. Often the State of the Union is a great time to press the reset button at the beginning of a new year, but also reminding Americans what our shared values are. But oftentimes you wonder, does it translate to action? Because the next day it's just politics as usual in D.C. Can you give us some recent examples in history where a speech then led on to really some bold action?
Well, I think most of the State of the Union speeches that we remember are in the first 2 years of a president's term. They usually begin, I think every president but one from Reagan through Obama begins by offering an economic program, and most of them are able to get it enacted. By the 6th year of the second term of a president is lucky enough to be reelected, what you tend to get at best is a description of the journey that America has taken under their leadership and a prescription for what needs to be done to address the unfinished business over the next 2 years. And I think what President Obama is going to do tonight is say, as many presidents before him have said, that the State of the Union is strong and getting stronger. As Presidents Clinton and Reagan before him did, he's going to credit the American people with working so hard to achieve an economic recovery. And then what he's going to talk about is what we need to do to make that recovery and translate into raising wages and improving living standards for the great majority of the American people.
Hey, David Frum, Abby in her question said, the State of the Union is a good way to reset the conversation. But is it time to reset the State of the Union? Is it time to rethink the way the State of the Union is used in the modern age?
You mean the speech itself?
Yeah.
Well, no president is ever going to give it up, especially because the last president who made a serious attempt to do it differently was Richard Nixon, and he came to a bad end. That he, you'll recall, sent Congress a series of written position papers. He did not appear in person, and they're very substantive, but it didn't lead to a lot of results. And of course, how that story happened. It's too tempting. And even though, as Crystal just indicated, even though there's some question about whether it really has any impact, especially after the first 1 or 2, it is presidents never lose faith in the power of their communicative magic, no matter how strong the evidence is to the contrary.
Yeah, and we know it reaches so many people. It has that political impact. 33 million watched it live just last year, and that was second term. I was interviewing White House Communications Director Jen Palmieri, Mr. Kusnet, about the kind of lines that sometimes don't make it in. Let me play her answer on that.
You fight really hard, passionately hard for a particular phrase or line, and maybe it's because things move so fast, but like a week or so later, you may not be able to recollect it. But I think that there's a phrase in this speech that I think really sums up the speech well, and you'll hear it tonight. Yes.
Is it domestic or foreign?
It is domestic. It's about the economy. It's about the middle class.
It's about the middle class. She wouldn't give too much away, Mr. Kusnet, but maybe you could tell us any favorite lines of yours that never made it into an address, and what would be a snappy line for the president on the middle class tonight?
Well, the great thing about working for President Clinton is that he he didn't use everything you gave him, but he remembered everything you gave him. So very often we'd find that we'd give him a line for one speech, and he'd sort of think it over, and he wouldn't use it in the speech we gave it to him for, but then we wouldn't include it in a speech somewhere down the road, and he'd surprise us all by giving it. So with him, nothing ever went completely to waste.
So incredible to... Go ahead, David.
I think well, I guess if I were going to suggest a line for President Obama tonight, and it happens to be the title of a book that I co-wrote, it would be that America needs a raise. That we have generated jobs, and now it's time to raise wages and incomes. And that's something which everyone from Speaker Boehner to President Obama has talked about. And I think he should capture that slogan as his own.
I think that's very well said. David Kusnet and David Frum.